Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Leaf from Weird City Games. Leaf is a 1 to 4 player tile placement game in which the tiles in this case are leaves. You're going to be placing down leaves into a common forest area together with the other players to try to get the various benefits of the various tips that you match up to. There's a lot of things going on here. Basically, there's 5 different tracks that you're going to be mindful of as far as how you're trying to score points in this game. But let's go ahead and just show you a first turn, then let's talk a little bit more about the infrastructure and then go back to a turn or two. So starting off, you're going to look at your hand of leaf cards. You're going to pick one of the specific leaf types showing. Because you can see over here, we have the specific leaf, and leaf over here. Depending on what you're trying to do, you're going to go ahead and select one of those leaves. So I'm going to go ahead and select this leaf over here. So I'm going to play this card down here. Let's go ahead and discard that card. I'm going to take the top leaf of this pile and I'm going to go ahead and put it down onto the board. And I'm going to get the rewards of anything I touch with the various edges. So you can see, for example, if I go over here, I would get these two over here, which wouldn't necessarily be a ton. But if I go over here, is there more I can get? I don't know if I could get more. Over here, there we go. So if I go ahead and place this like this, I'll be able to get a few different tips going on depending on how you place that leaf. So for example, I will get 2 orange benefits over here, and orange is going to let me collect animal cards, and I'll get 2 green benefits, which lets me collect new cards, which is important because if you ever run out of cards, well, you take a bit of a penalty and can't really otherwise, you gather new cards but take a penalty along the way. So right now, I'll go ahead and execute that. So again, I have this tip touching these two tips are touching those 2 tips. So I'm going to grab 2 green cards and add them to my collection of possible leaves I can play. And then over here, I'm going to go ahead and collect 2 animal cards from this display, and I'm actually going to gather those 2 foxes because, well, I mean, foxes are great, and more importantly, you want sets of animals. So I'm going to go ahead and also take an acorn, which is a point because this fox has an acorn on it. So I gather an acorn, I have these 2 foxes, they'll go above my fold here. They are not necessarily going to score yet, we'll talk about that. And look at that, we have 3 crows ready for the next person. The next person is going to go ahead and take their turn, and they're now working with this revised display, whatever I've now added to the board. Let's pretend that they play this leaf card over here. So they're going to place this one down over here. And again, they're trying to figure out how to optimize what they can get out of this placement depending on how things go. So for example, this over here is not a bad spot. They're going to place that down over there. And they're going to get 2 greens and 2 mushrooms. So over here, let's go ahead and grab their mushroom box over here. We're going to give themselves 2 mushrooms. Mushrooms are going to get planted on leaves, and you'll see how they operate in a second. With 2 mushroom placements here and here, they can either go ahead and get 2 small mushrooms, or take a small mushroom and then turn it into a big one. In this case, they're going to go ahead and take 2 small mushrooms because, you know, the game's new, and those small mushrooms are currently worth getting more rather than bigger, and we'll explain more about that soon. They're also going to go ahead and grab 2 leaf cards, and that's their turn. Back to my turn over here. I'm going to go ahead and play one of these over here, so I'm going to discard that and grab this one, and let's see how we can place it as optimally as possible, if I can place it as optimally as possible. I'm going to try not to change my moves over here just for the sake of expediency. I'm going to place it down over here. Now these leaves are interesting because they kind of create a bit of a cut-off, meaning other leaves kind of create new edges as they get placed. This one kind of closes things off. You still have these edges, but these close things off a bit. We're going to place that down over here. Now, I will note for the record, this is not necessarily an ideal placement because of the mushrooms that were just placed, but I want to kind of show you how things operate. So, we're going to go ahead and place that leaf down. Now, I'm going to go ahead and collect 2 sunlight because of those 2 touching edges. So, I'm going to take 2 sun, and sun is incredibly useful because it's going to be used to pay for advancing the season tracker, which is one of the 2 endgame triggers. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take 2 mushrooms as well, and I'll go ahead and pop my own mushrooms down the board. I'll pop them down over here to like start getting, new placements on the board in other areas where the other player is not. Meanwhile, because I activated these leaves, that player, because of their mushrooms, is going to get 2 sunlight. Now the way that works is a little bit specific. Basically, if you have the largest mushroom type or tied for the largest mushroom type, you get that sunlight. Meaning, right now they got 2 sunlight. If I had this leaf here, they would still get 2 sunlight. But if I had a large mushroom here, they would only get sunlight for this leaf, and I would get sunlight for this leaf over here. Effectively, you want to have mushrooms spread out around the course of the board, and sometimes getting a larger mushroom is helpful both for endgame scoring and for getting in the way of others. In the meantime, though, they're going to get 2 sun. We'll just put that off to the side. That's the kind of structure you're placing over here as far as you go. So you've already seen 4 different things: getting animal cards from the orange leaves, getting mushrooms from the red leaves, getting sun from the yellow leaves, getting more leaf cards from the green leaves, and you do need those to keep running. And finally, if we place the brown leaf down, let's see how we could place this as efficiently as possible. Over here is a nice little placement. There we go. When you place down a brown leaf, or not when you place it, when you connect to a brown leaf, you're going to be able to move up on this tree tracker, choosing branching paths whenever you want, getting the various bonuses of what you move along the way. So getting more sun, more animal cards, more acorns, all things like that as you move up the tree. That is how you play the game as far as the actual turns you're doing. A few other general infrastructure things so you know how you score, what you're trying to vie for as you do this. So first of all, leaf cards are essential because leaf cards keep your engine running. You cannot take a turn without a leaf card, and you don't want to go ahead and take those penalty points over here, so you do need to have leaf cards, which means leaf cards will give you both options if you have more of them, and also ensuring you don't take negative points. Meanwhile, the sun is helpful over here because every turn, once per turn, you can pay 3 sun to advance this marker, and when you do so, you take the acorns of the spot you land on, and those are going to be worth points as well. And whenever you cross a frost line, you get to hibernate one type of animal. Not necessarily one animal, but one type of animal, and now these animals will have the possibility of scoring once they go below the fold of your player board. Additionally, when you cross into winter, you're going to trigger game end. That's one of 2 ways that game end triggers. The other way is whenever you empty a leaf pile, you get revealed a little spot over here, and that once 3 leaf piles are emptied, that will be the other end game trigger. So you're going to go ahead and have those 2 possible end game triggers. Meanwhile, mushrooms are helpful because they gain you additional sun as players place leaves next to your mushrooms, but also because at the end of the game, having groups of adult mushrooms can score you 1, 3, or even 8 points for having connected groups of mushrooms. 1, 2, or 3 mushrooms will score you 1, 3, or 8 points, with you getting an additional point for every other large mushrooms, unless you start a new separate group, in which case that new group will score again, meaning you kind of want to split those things off into separate groups once you're at 3. Additionally, your animals are going to score 1, 3, or 6 points for 1, 2, or 3 of the same animal, with every additional animal being worth 1 more point. So again, you want to have sets of animals, and because you can only place 3 of them below the fold, that means at maximum, you're going to be scoring for 3 types of animals throughout the course of the game. Lastly, you're going to get points for every remaining 2 sun or leaf cards. You're going to get a point for that. And then also on the tree over here, whoever's highest in the tree is going to get 6 points, and the second highest will get 3 points. And so you're constantly trying to build and manage this engine, moving up on the tree, gathering sun, trading in sun, placing more leaf cards, getting those mushrooms out so you can build a bit of a constantly recurring income network. You're trying to balance all of those things as you go through this game until eventually game is triggered, you see who has the most acorns, and that is who will win your game of Leaf. Which brings us to a review, starting off with ease of play. Overall, rulebook's fairly straightforward. The actions you take are fairly easy to understand. There's nothing overly complicated going on in this game. There's some set collection. There's 5 different actions effectively that you're taking. There's the placing the leaves on the board to try to match up those edges. Nothing in this game was overly complicated to learn. A very easy game to get up and running, to teach others, and plays in around 30 to 45 minutes. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, first of all, the game is visually beautiful. The table presence, if nothing else, placing down leaves is just fun. Trying to find that extra leaf placement, like this spot over here, is a little irritating. I'm trying to find a way to get here we go, one of these leaves might do it for me. Nope, it's not going to really. You can pair that up and get something, maybe that counts over here. That's one of the things that is a little interesting as far as the rules, as far as what is and isn't legal placement. Like, I'm pretty sure this would trigger these 2 and these 2 over there based on the edges. The rulebook covers how much wiggle room you have over there. But overall, the game is visually delightful to actually sit there and try to puzzle out what leaf combinations and how to get that extra placement out of it. For the most part, a fairly common turn is getting 4 perks out of something. Which 4 perks is depending on the leaf, but there are and will be times where you get that 5 or 6 perk turn, and those are satisfying moments to find that combination, and that's where having that leaf variety is going to be helpful. And that goes into the fact that there's 5 different tracks, and they are all compelling in different ways. Getting sun is essential, because you're going to get big blocks of points to slowly advance in this marker, so you need to get sun, but that means sun cards are helpful, but so are mushroom cards, because mushroom cards will help you build out your network. But additionally, mushroom cards are not going to help you just get sun during the game, they'll also help you get giant chunks of points end game, so you're trying to be mindful of that as well. Meanwhile, moving up the tree is going to give you small perks. Getting leaf cards are essential for that flexibility and the variety, and getting animal cards are just nice chunks of extra points as you're able to place those animals below your board and potentially get extra acorns or little bonuses along the way from those things. And so those 5 things fighting over each other and trying to manage and mitigate which ones are most important to you at any given time is a big part of the game, and obviously paying attention to the game state of where things are on the table and what options you actually have. That's going to be a big part of it as well that you're trying to balance. To me, the mushrooms are the most compelling decision space around the game. Everything else is fairly basic, fairly straightforward. The mushrooms, though, are both an in-game and an end-game currency, and trying to balance where and how you place those, and where and how you get in each other's ways, that's one of the more interesting elements of area control that I personally find the most interesting from the 5 metrics. I find the leaves are essential. The tree I mostly kind of ignore, try to ignore, I should say. You will get points to them eventually. The sun is essential because it's straight up points, but the mushrooms are the most interesting to me as I try to place those on. And then the animals as well, I like them, but not as much as the trees, or not as much as the sun or the mushrooms. As far as what I don't like in the game, I wish the Leafs gave you more of a chance of swings in the game. Like I said already, you kind of very often have a basic 4-move turn. I find more often than not, it's a 4-move turn, it's a 4-move turn. Infrequently, you'll have something less than that. Maybe you get a 3-move placement, and then infrequently you have a 5 or 6-move placement, but it's usually fairly standard. This game to me, is not as often, and again, that will change if you only have one Leaf card in your hand. You have less flexibility and less variety, and depending on the board state as it closes, you'll have things closing off. But more often than not, if you pick any Leaf, you'll have a 4-move turn out of it. Let's go ahead and try to find that out right now. If we grab this Leaf over here, we're going to have a... Over here we have 2-move turn. Over here we have a 4-move turn. Can we get a 5-move turn out of this Leaf? I don't believe we can. It would, again, it would be... It's probably doable somewhere. Over here we have another 1, 2, 3, 4. Can we get over here? We have another 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm realizing now that's off camera. You can't see that spot. Over here, nope. Over here, maybe, no, nope. Over here, again, like any Leaf you pick, you will frequently and easily be able to find a 4-benefit turn, and it's more about picking the benefits. Again, there are times you get that 5 or 6 or possibly the 3, which is less satisfying. But I'd say that I wish to me, the whole principle of the game is about the leaves, and to that end, I kind of wanted more variability from it, more opportunities to feel clever, to find the patterns, as opposed to more often than not feeling like you get that 4-move turn. Now, it is good for balance purposes. For balance purposes, that is good. It means turns are fairly consistent. There's no large swings. I guess to me, if I have the entire game being about that Leaf placement, I wanted those large swings to be a drop more prevalent. I'll also say that wasted animals feel like a waste. Very often in the game you're gathering animals, and you can only really score 3 types of animals, and the extra animals you're kind of getting but not really able to do much with them. And so this board over here, there's just not enough control over having the right things come out. And so when you have extra animals, and for the most part in our games we've had players who more often than not will have more than 3 animal types, I just find the wasted animals are less fun, which is one of the reasons I don't go for them at all, because if I don't go for them at all, then I'll maybe get like 2 or 3 animals, but if I go for them, I will inevitably get wasted animals. I wish there was something you can do with those to get something out of them, as opposed to feeling like, hey, I got cards that I will never ever benefit from. As far as what I can see others not liking the game, first of all, the board doesn't always give you what you want. That's just the nature of what this puzzle is. Sure, you might want to heavily go for sun, but if there's not a good placement for sun, like right now over here, this one's usually cut off pretty decently, so you're trying to get to maybe over here, these 2 cards, but what if you don't want to go up the tree? I mentioned already, tree isn't my favorite spot, so if I grab this and I put this here, sure, I can get my 2 sun, but I'm also getting 2 tree movement, and maybe that's not what I wanted over here, so maybe I have to try to get something else, but I can't get mushrooms, so I can go over here and try to get, some other things. This won't even really score me that much. It's a bad placement. Over here I can get 2 animal cards, but I said already I don't like animals, so you are often stuck with whatever the board is currently giving you based on what the other players have put out on the table. So if you're like trying to think through how you can optimally get everything you want, you won't always have that flexibility. Sometimes you just have to make the best out of a bad set of leaves. I was going to say bad hand, but bad set of leaves instead. I'll say that groups that are too large, you kind of want to split up, which could be not really intuitive. Now, that's sort of true for animals, but not really necessarily as true, because you don't get as many animal cards. It's very rare that you'll get, like, 6 foxes or whatnot. But for the mushroom placement over here, the fact that mushrooms will score better in 2 separate groups of 3 compared to just one connected group kind of feels like a weird oddity, meaning it doesn't feel like that really added or changed my strategy of the game so much as it was something to just consider. Okay, just make sure the mushrooms aren't all touching each other as you grow them, so you're not stuck in having 6 mushrooms together is just less points than 2 groups of 3 large mushrooms. So it's not really a problem per se, but it felt like an oddity in the scoring that didn't add to my strategies. I just added something else I have to be mindful of, but not necessarily getting in the way, if that makes sense. As far as final thoughts on Leaf, I overall enjoyed Leaf, with the caveat that I wish the leaves felt more essential to the actual game aspect. Now, they make no mistake, they're essential. They are essential to the game, but more in the sense that this game is more about managing those 5 tracks than it is about leaf placement. Leaf placement is a part of it, but for me it's like, okay, great, I'm trying to manage 5 different tracks, and I'm trying to take the opportunities that are present, and that's going to be dependent upon the board, but the actual cleverness of having like 5, 6 different types of leaves didn't feel as important to the gameplay as it could have or should have. I'd say that these leaves over here are definitely important because they close off the board in different areas, so those for sure definitely felt like they had a big impact. But the other leaf types, at least to myself, rarely felt like it made a significant difference. And again, I'm sure it can, I'm sure it does, there are times you find them, but I wish there had been a lot more present. But past that, if I'm getting over that, the game itself, though, is very good. The game itself, though, does give you a fairly simple gateway game with 5 tracks to be mindful of, different ways to mitigate and manage yourself around those tracks. Like I said already, the mushroom game to me was the most compelling strategic aspect of trying to lay out the mushrooms based on the board and based on what players are going for to try to optimize what you get back out of it. And so for me, this game at the end of it is a 3.5 out of 5. The least part have me wanting a bit more out of that system, but the rest of the game still works well around the core engine of what's happening here. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, if you're looking for another game with interesting tile placement that's going to give you a fun little puzzle of how to place things down into a grid, Hamlet from Mighty Boards will give you a different little tile placement of unique tiles that you're trying to fit into your own village. And then secondly, if you're looking for another game about managing different tracks and trying to optimize how different tracks will pay off in different ways, Planet Unknown from Adam's Apple Games is a phenomenal game of simultaneous play as you try to manage different tracks in a space-faring polyomino game. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Ratcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.